Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rakhma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce. And the truth that is rooted within me.
Well, welcome to MindShifters Radio. My name is Michael Ryce, and we're on our, being in the Ozarks and the boonies technical challenges day, so I don't hear Jeanie's voice, so I assume she isn't there. But David made it on the show today. Hi, David.
Hello, Michael. And I think
how do you be, sir?
With you. I'm doing
cool.
very well. Yeah.
Who else do we have?
I'm here.
Hey there, Dr. Tim. How are you?
Well, I couldn't be any better.
Awesome. Tell me about it.
Well, we had an absolutely fabulous MindShifters group last night. We downloaded the show from yesterday.
What happened?
Well, we downloaded the show from yesterday and took it and played it for the MindShifters group because it was such a fabulous example of working through the 7-step worksheet process and getting tremendous shifts and insights along the way. So
yeah.
we did. So we listened to the show and stopped the tape and answered questions throughout the tape. And then we had a member who was very stuck in a worksheet, and she asked if we could work through it. So we worked through a worksheet process for her and helped her gain a tremendous shift for a very powerful relationship problem in her family, which was leaving her very stuck and frustrated. So it was a very powerful group, very powerful.
Fabulous. As I acknowledge Lynn for being so courageous to just put it out there and so willing. That's one of the biggest keys in this process. A lot of people go kicking and screaming, I don't want to look at that, I don't want to deal with that, and they don't realize it runs their lives daily. So I don't know if Lynn is with us today, but it was certainly awesome to have her in such a willing space. And that certainly will become one of our lead shows, that doing a worksheet. I mean, it couldn't have been scripted any better, Lynn. So thank you if you're listening. And if you're not listening, thank you anyway.
Well, and Michael, I think it was such a good example, and I strongly encourage people to go back and listen to the archives because it's a good example of so many things. We can't even talk about all of them in one show. But the flow of energy, the way people get on the same page, the way we can support each other, the things that get stirred up for other people, the things that get stirred up for me when I'm doing a worksheet on a seemingly insignificant issue or a medium-level intensity issue, and how after I do enough of those, it can stir up a much bigger, more important issue for me. There's just so many different levels in that show. I strongly encourage people to download it and give it a listen.
Yeah, and, the truth is there are no little issues. Everyone, as we talked about yesterday with the string of beads, the reason there are beads in so many religious practices is because all these things are hooked together, and we go from one to another to another. And the use of beads in the church rituals and the Buddhist ritual is symbolic of dropping down deeper into that dissociated mind and cleaning out its content and seeing how things are strung together, just like a string of beads. She was just so fabulously willing. If I could have written the script for a live worksheet, I couldn't have written a script better than that one. So again, thank you, Lynn. If you're listening or not listening, we're very appreciative, and we hold the space that the next level of your work is ready to move and go. We certainly support you.
Well, and Michael, as I was doing the group yesterday, I was getting nudged because we would stop and try and explain to some that we had some brand new people in the group, and so it was very powerful.
Right.
But it was also flooding them with a lot of material. So I would stop.
Oh yeah.
I would stop the tape and answer questions. And one of my group members was teasing me about how this is going to be an interesting blog entry this week. And I wanted to share what had popped into my head just before that.
Oh, cool.
And that is the following quote: "Anger is only as productive for resolving a situation I don't like as a fire alarm is for putting out a fire."
Oh, that's awesome.
Clinging to my anger and raging at another person or situation is like blasting the alarm at the flames and expecting the fire to be extinguished.
Perfect. Yep, that's phenomenal. Now, if you copyrighted that, can I use that, Kim?
I just sent it to you in an email, so it's yours to use.
Cool.
I just wrapped it up by saying that this is not to say the fire alarm is useless or should be eliminated. It's simply recognizing the role of the alarm is to mobilize me to take corrective action to find the source of the problem and remedy it. The alarm is not the solution. It's only an indication of the presence of error and the need for a solution.
Right. Somebody, and you might add this to it, we just finished teachers training. Actually, this morning we did our final still point breathing session. I'm sitting with one of the young ladies who was at the teachers training, but one of the teachers, and I always get to learn when I do teachers training, one of them came up with the idea of and I've always used the example of the fire alarm. You don't cut the wires to the bell. You haven't put the fire out. Same as if you take an anesthetic for pain, you don't put the internal fire up. But what they came up with as they were teaching a section of the workshop, the whole group produces a Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop as part of the teachers training, and they came up with the pain is just a call to 911. It's a 911 call by the body saying, I got something wrong here, I got something going on, and I need help. As opposed to, and that's a fabulous way to say it. I've never thought of it that way. Raging at somebody or is like trying to put the sound of the fire alarm on the fire and put the fire out. So, which of course it won't do. But fabulous, great insight, very cool. So I don't know if Jeanie is just not able to get her phone to operate today, which is seeming to be more typical at our facility. Hopefully things are going to change. There was a big full-page ad in the paper this week that said that an-cient was expanding their coverage in our area. So hopefully that will happen soon, and that will give us a decent signal because we're on a thing called Straight Talk through AT&T. But are you in the chat room, Tim? Is the chat room operating? And
Yep, well, we're up there. People are just slowly coming in. There's only one other person who said hello. Jeanie put a note that says she doesn't have a signal yet. So
right. Okay.
We have some people who've been on for the past few days that are in the chat room, and they're just starting to pop up now. So they might have missed what we were saying about yesterday's show, but we'll keep you posted as it goes on.
Yes, and one of the new things is happening. This just developed this morning, and that is that we've decided to add an intensive for the month of September, and we won't know until tomorrow which date it will be, but from either the 9th to the 17th or the 16th to the 24th. We're going to add a 9-day intuitive development intensive. And the intuitive development is an awesome process. It's one where we'll do, of course, the forgiveness work, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, and still point breathing. But then the rest of the 9 days is totally dedicated to a practicum for getting the feedback when our intuition is on or off, and developing the ability to listen to that faculty, really strengthening. We've talked in the past about David's 5 smooth stones and Goliath, and of course it's made to look like a physical battle, but really David and Goliath is a story about the non-being mind, the mind based in hostility or fear, trying to take over and run us. It was meant to be a servant, but because of all the rages and fears and traumas that have been put into it, it's become literally most people's master. In fact, in the ancient scriptures they talked about, you're bound by the servants in your own temple, in your own household. And so one of the 5 smooth stones of David is intuition. If we're talking about a physical battle, it's not something I've ever been trained in, but I suspect that if you were going into a physical battle, you'd want the most jagged rocks you could get your hands on, not smooth ones, so that you do the most damage possible. And so this thing of the smooth stones is practiced faculties. In the Laws of Living, the intensive we start tomorrow, we work with particularly the faculty of will, which is one of the 5 smooth stones. And that's one that we practice and work with in that. And then in the intuitive development, the other one is intuition. That's so there are 2 of the spiritual faculties, 2 of the 5 smooth stones. Third one is reason. Fourth one is imagination. And that's the ability not to fantasize. And, there's the non-being mind. Goliath has got a cheap copy of everything that's real in the spiritual dimension. And the non-being mind's cheap copy of imagination is fantasy. But we're not talking about fantasy. We're talking about the ability to image in, to bring something into our structure that has never been seen in our world before. And you look at the great inventors, and several of them talk about how they just reach up into the air and pull this idea down. That's exactly what the intuitive faculty does. And the imagination is the ability to structure that energy and bring it into expression in the world. And so that's one of the other things that's being added is the faculty of intuition developing through intuitive development. September we'll do a 9-day residential intensive. So if anybody wants to work on that faculty, come and play. For those who aren't familiar with Heartland, we've got a residential teaching center in the Ozarks in southern Missouri. Actually, Jeanie, this last 16 days, 17 days, has just done this awesome job of the live food in the kitchen. Such creative stuff has just been amazing. So we do total live food, which helps to create a detox, and it was everybody's take in this 16-day intensive was, man, if I could eat like this all the time. I thought that eating fresh, raw, live food meant you eat lettuce and apples, but Jeanie serves such a wide variety. One of the dishes she created out of a squash was sliced it somewhat like spaghetti and did a raw tomato sauce with dehydrated, fake meatballs. And it was, everybody was like, this is like, if you warmed this up, you couldn't tell it from the best, restaurant spaghetti going. Spaghetti and meatballs. The stuff she created was just awesome. So anybody who's ready to get that experience, and part of the intensive experience is also getting your hands on the food so that you get some friendliness with actual food, with that fresh, raw, live food. And universally, everybody was like, even the meat eaters that were there, like, well, I wasn't hungry. This was satisfying. It was fulfilling. I didn't miss meat at all, and every meal was an awesome, awesome experience. And then she did these desserts. Last night we had an apple pear pie. Oh, to live for. Anyway, David, anything for you to share here? I thought I heard David's voice a little while ago. But Maybe not.
Yeah, I thought he was on there too.
Anything happening in the chat room?
Nope. Right now it's very quiet. So that's an intriguing idea, developing your intuition. How long is that going to be again? From early September to?
It's a 9-day. Actually, we'll make the decision tomorrow. It came about as a result of two of the people that were in teacher training that said they wanted to do it, and asked if we'd schedule it for September. So we'll know tomorrow. They're going back home to check calendars. It will either be from the 9th to the 17th of September, or the 16th to the 24th. The 16th, the 9th, and the 16th are Friday night. So a 9-day intensive goes through Friday night and a week the following Saturday, so people can take 1 week off work if they're working and take the day off Friday to travel, and then they're back home. So it just takes 1 week to do off work to do a 9-day intensive. And as I say, it's a practicum. It just moves into deepening the ability to listen without reference to your ears or your mind, to see without reference to your eyes or your body's mind. Because, of course, when we filter things through the body's mind, it always has its own content. This intuitive faculty is the faculty with which we can go directly to an experience that's happening, or the actual experience, and bring back information about it. And it's something that just kind of naturally develops. Actually, the young lady that's sitting with me now just drove up to Springfield to take her to the airport. And we do a personal code evaluation as part of the intensives. And she's quite strong intellect, businesswoman, very successful businesswoman. And she said, when we handed the evaluations to everybody, she'd been here for the last 17 days. We handed the evaluations out yesterday. She expected to just sit down and zip through it like she did when she got here. And what she shared after the completion of it, she's like, I didn't even know what those questions meant. It was like my mind wasn't functioning. It's like, all right, cool. In order to heal, you got to be out of your mind. And you could just see on her face where she was living. Instead of this hard intellect and, driven by the intellect, what she was living in was the state of being, the state of this compassionate energy. To me, one of the most awesome things about the session we did with Lynn yesterday was how she started out in, real rage and, at one point in one of the pieces, wanting to kill somebody. She started out there, and as she was able to move through the forgiveness process, that her shift was to a space of connectedness and compassion, and the people who she shared that she literally fantasized about taking a gun and killing them, that she was just in a state of compassion and help love for them. It's like such an awesome space, and that's the shift from what we've been describing to everybody as the non-being mind into the mind of being. And each of the intensives is geared to do that, but the intuitive development is especially geared to develop that intuitive faculty. So it's a little different than what we just went through with teacher training and what we're going to go through in the next 2 weeks with Laws of Living. In the Laws of Living intensive, we look at the idea that, the king wants us to believe that law is the rule of a superior, and of course he's the superior and he's going to make the rules. And, whether it's King George or, King Obama or whatever, doesn't really matter. It's like, we're going to run your life. And in the minute that some human being pretends that they can run somebody else's lives better than they can run their own, of course, you've got to have fraud involved. And the fraud is just so rampant that it's unbelievable, and it's all coming out in the wash these days. But that law is not the rule of a superior. Law is a result of the eternal forces that exist in the universe. And there's laws the same in the physical universe, or we call the physical universe. Nobody would think about violating the law of gravity unless they wanted to pay the consequences. Gee, I'm standing at the edge of a 2,000-foot cliff. Let's see now. I don't want to fall down when I step off this cliff. Well, the eternal forces don't really care what you want. If you step off the cliff, you're going to go down. That's all. You don't have a choice of your feet going up. It's not the way law works. Well, what we work toward in the laws of living intensive is starting to understand that there are equivalent laws in the mental and emotional universes that don't really care what you think about how they operate. They operate not at the whim of some dictator, not changeable, but simply the result of the way these forces of creation work. And of course, we only have liberty to work within the forces that we understand. I always like to use the example of imagine that you're just building yourself a beautiful new 3,000 square foot home, and you need somebody to wire it. Would you want to be, knowing that you were going to be asleep in the house at 3 in the morning when the power's turned on, would you want to hire my great-great-grandmother to wire your house? Of course, my great-great-grandmother knows nothing about the laws of electricity, and that house is probably going to burn down if she wires it. You don't want to be asleep in that house at 3 in the morning, and you don't want my great-great-grandmother wiring your house. She has no liberty to work within a venue where she doesn't understand the laws. And there are laws of the emotional universe. If you don't follow them, it's the same as jumping off a cliff. And you look at people in their drama and trauma and, why does God allow this? Why does God do this to me? And they have no idea. And this is what the theology should have been teaching people all along, is the laws by which those universes work. But it doesn't work very well for the king. That's why the king basically buys everybody off. Well, we'll give you a tax-deductible status if you'll keep your mouth shut and go along with the game as we're doing it, rather than teaching people about these eternal laws. So it's pretty much been disappeared. It's pretty much been vanished, the whole idea. And as a result, people live in so much drama and trauma that's totally and completely unnecessary. So we're here to support people in understanding how this universe operates and what our part in it is and what the laws are by which the mind, by which the emotions, by which the physiological system works, and then how it moves around in the creation. And, there's just the way it works. And, of course, forgiveness is the way that you undo the law-breaking part of your own mind. When you realize that we each inherit 1,000 generations of what we call a personal code. That's something we'll go into deeply in the laws of living. And the personal code is basically a result of the speech system that's developed. And, of course, we started learning speech, and therefore the rules by which our family system and our culture governs their minds. And most of it's totally unconscious, and a significant amount of it is out of harmony with law. How do you tell if something is out of harmony with law? There's hostility or fear in the mind. That's all you need to know. If you look at any true system of teaching that has tapped into, that has taken the time to step out of the insanity of its culture, the rages, the fears, the wars, the warmongers, the killers, the thieves, who've taken the time to step out of that and deepen their own experience, what you find universally is that the underlying energy of the universe is love. Everyone who drops out of the cultural mind of hostility and fear into the true mind, and there's one philosopher named Schopenhauer who says that there's only one functioning mind in the universe, and that mind is the mind of love. Everyone who's ever dropped out of the insane mind says that's the underlying energy, and that we each individually and collectively have the ability to connect with that mind. So we just finished having 16 days of those awesome connections with folks and getting ready for, we had 17 days, getting ready for another 16 days. So if anybody wants to jump in and do that, it's going to be a small intensive. There's going to be lots of personal and individual attention. So come and play with us. We'd be delighted to have you there. And or come play in September for intuitive development. We'll know the dates tomorrow, the 9th to the 17th, or the 16th to the 24th. So, Dr. Tim, do we have any questions in the chat? Well, before we do that, let me just, in case anybody doesn't know who Dr. Tim is that might be listening, Dr. Tim's a psychologist in Chicago, very ardent work that he's doing with with the tools and with the teaching with the support group, if you're up in the northwest Chicago area, you might tap into a Tuesday night support group, which is just reporting so many awesome happenings. And you might want to join us to do that. Tim, anything happening in the chat room? Oh, by the way, Tim, if you wanted to just announce the address of your blog, that's what I was starting to do, and I kind of lost track of my thought. But if you want to announce the site for your blog to tap in, and Tim's got several recordings of different things he's done on the work, you might want to just do that. And I think I heard Jeanie's voice in the background.
Yeah,
why don't we catch Jeanie first?
Phone.
Say again?
David brought me his phone over, so when you get a moment, we do have someone on the switchboard.
Okay. Well, let's just get Tim's address there.
My website is ch4cs.com. C as in cat, H as in hat, 4, C as in cat, S as in Sam.com. Link to my blog is there and those audios that you were mentioning. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. So we've got a caller, Jeanie?
Yes. Area code 215. You're on the air.
215. Welcome. Where are you calling from? And give us a name.
Oh, hi. My name is Linda. I'm calling from New Hope. I was just listening to your show. I guess I pressed 1. I don't know. I don't know why I did that, but do you take readings?
You didn't plan to come up with a question?
I don't know. I guess I didn't. What do you specialize in? I was just tuned in.
Oh, okay. Well, basically what we're working with, the show is called MindShifters Radio, and an hour a day, 5 days a week, we're here to support people in shifting their minds out of the game of hostility and fear and into the actual experience of a human life. And we define human life very simply. All you have to do is hold a newborn child, and you know what human life is, and you know what you're designed to live in. And the culture specializes in putting thumbprints on us so that we lose the experience of a human life. It's called spiritual death, and that we never regain that, right? Never recapture that. In the ancient Aramaic language, there's a tool, though, for recapturing your human life. It's called forgiveness, and it has nothing to do with what our culture teaches as I'm going to let you off the hook because I have pain happening inside of me, but rather if I have pain happening inside of me, to recognize that I've been there every time it's happened to me, so maybe I'm involved in my life. The title of my book is Why Is This Happening to Me Again, and What You Can Do About It. And so the forgiveness process is how you collapse the projections that it's all everybody else's fault. You go inside yourself and delete the root of all hostility, fear, and pain.
Okay, all right.
What our work is about. Yeah.
All right, that's interesting to me because, it's taken me a long time to forgive my ex-husband. I'm not sure I've done it.
What I suggest...
Yeah. Go ahead.
What I'd suggest is you never forgive your ex-husband. Never, never do that. It's a big mistake to try to do that.
Okay, just forgive.
And most people say, well, wait a minute, Michael, what are you talking about? What's a big mistake to forgive him? Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, you can't forgive him because forgiveness has nothing to do with what we've been taught, that it's about letting him off the hook for the terrible things he did. Mm-hmm. If you have residual pain from your experience and interaction with your life and with him, forgiveness is the tool with which you go in and collapse the projection that it could possibly be about him, and you go inside yourself and delete that pain. You remove that pain. That's forgiveness. What we've been taught is a Greek idea of pardoning in place of forgiveness. And so people go around trying to forgive, I'll forgive them, I'll let them off the hook, I'll let them off the hook, I'll let them off the hook. It's like, well, do I have to do this forever because they keep doing it to me? Well, what you'll find is that you're a creator and that you are responsible for the results you create in your life. And if you hold pain in a space where you're not willing to directly confront it or own it, then it keeps biting you. When you access the forgiveness process, you literally delete that pain. Yesterday was one of the most awesome shows we've done. We've been doing the show now for about 7 months, and you might want to just tap into the archive on our website. and download yesterday's show. We had a young lady who has just started. Actually, her name was Lynn. When I heard you saying Linda, I was thinking it might have been her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she's a woman who was having a problem with alcohol, and we ended up actually walking through the whole forgiveness process. We have a worksheet on our website, which I'll give you in a minute. And we walked through the whole forgiveness process, and she started out with a pretty large issue in her life about her father passed away, and the executor of the estate allowed the house to not be taken care of, and mold to set in. So now there's going to be a significant loss, and she was in rage about it when she started. And as we started to do the forgiveness work around that, she realized that it tied into, she was a medical doctor, that it tied into 20 years ago when, because she healed a child of cancer using nutrition instead of drugs, the medical board came after her and took her license. And at one stage, she came across the idea that she wanted to get a gun and kill them. And then she tied into how that related to her relationship with her father, who never approved of her, much like the medical board didn't, and much like she didn't approve of this executor of the estate. And as she walked through that whole thing, I mean, the result was absolutely awesome. It was so if you want to experience a direct experience of what it looks like and how it works, first of all, you can go to our website, www.whyagain.com, and you'll see a link at the top that says Blog Talk Radio, and you can go there and get a link to the archive of yesterday's show and the last 6 months of shows. And then on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. And if you download the first 3 links under the Download Worksheets link, you'll have a chapter from my book that describes the forgiveness process. You'll have a copy of the latest 7-step, what we call reality management worksheet, forgiveness worksheet. And then there's another archive of an earlier show that we did with the woman that we walked through the process. Although the earlier show, it gives the instructions, it was actually kind of just a thing where a woman volunteered to come into the studio and record with us going through a worksheet. So it was kind of a mechanical, here's how the steps work. Where yesterday, it was just awesome because this young lady was right in it and on it and dealing with her alcohol problem, being really honest about it. And so it was very powerful to see the shifts and changes that she got. So you might want to download these things and you'll get a touch of what Aramaic forgiveness is about. And what will happen is, as you go through the forgiveness process, the place where she ended up with the medical board, which is the main worksheet we did, where, like 4 steps early in the process, she wanted to get a gun and kill somebody. The person who really did this, played this out. It was an oncologist who lost the business as this child healed cancer through nutrition. No complaint whatsoever from the patient, from the parent. The child was healed of cancer. And the oncologist filed the complaint against her, and she literally wanted to shoot him. When she got down to the bottom of the worksheet, the completion point of it, her shift was into compassion, and she could see the kind of trauma. She described how he sat in their meeting blowing smoke in her face, smoking, and all of a sudden she could see the trauma in his face and the pain that he was coming from. And instead of wanting to kill him, she's like, I'm a healer. I can create a space of support for healing this guy. And once I handle my pain around anybody, once I forgive my pain, all that's left is my human life. And human life is naturally compassionate. It doesn't matter even to the most horrific of enemies. But because most of our culture has no taste and no idea what a human life is, most people live in the insanity of the rage, the fear, the war, the killing. And by the way, one of the things that we invite everybody to do, and I'm not sure, maybe Jeanie's still on the line there and knows what day it is, what number it is, but back on Memorial Day, about 60-some days ago, we decided that the best way to celebrate those who'd been murdered and been forced to murder and been maimed and brought their injuries home to carry it out with their families, that the best way to honor them was for each of us to pick at least one issue each day of the show and celebrate Memorial Day every show we have with the invitation to pick up and one issue, the smallest irritation or upset, the smallest agitation, and choose to use the forgiveness worksheet to remove it, to forgive. So we invite you to participate in that. And now you know what we do.
Okay,
or at least we scratched the surface of it.
That was certainly very informative. That is a different idea of forgiveness than I've been taught. So,
Well,
so thank you.
If you go back into the ancient Aramaic, and interestingly enough, the Aramaic language is the root language of at least 5 of the world's major religions. Not because it's a religious language. It's because they knew the laws of the universe in the Aramaic. In fact, it's the only language on the planet that has a word for cause law. There's no other language, the Greeks, the Latin language, the Old English, the English, they don't even have a word for this thing that they understood was at cause, and how we individually are creators. So that there was this understanding, which is why it's the root of 5 of the world's major religions. Now, sadly, men take those things and bastardize them and turn them into something they were never intended to be. But those 5 major religions still hang around because they still have a level of communication and understanding about that, the way the universe operates. And so the original in the Aramaic, when we decided that we didn't want to be responsible for something we were experiencing, what they understood was that what happens is you deny it. In fact, you go all the way back to the book of James, and you hear James saying, stop your denial. It's just like a treatment program in today's AA or NA circles. And stop your denial, because when we deny, we literally create an unnatural condition in our minds, and we create what we call a dissociated mind. When we deny, we hide something from ourselves. We create an unconscious. In the ancient Aramaic, that the word that described that was the heart. And if you look back there, you hear them saying, you must forgive from your heart the wrongs of your brother. Now, through the Greek translations, that kind of sounds like some sort of a bleeding heart statement. But through the Aramaic, what it is it's saying you've got to go into your own dissociated mind, and everything that you're blaming everybody else for, you've got to change inside yourself. And when we stop this game of blame, the only reason I'm feeling this is because of you, and we take responsibility, we remove those things. And, of course, that doesn't mean that people haven't done insane things that they need to be accountable for, but I don't need to be in drama and trauma and pain because somebody else does something insane. And their insane behavior doesn't cause my drama and trauma and pain. My drama and trauma and pain in my dissociated mind is what does that or creates that. And if I never learn to forgive it, then I get to live the title of my book. Why is this happening to me again? Because what I hold in my mind goes back to bite me over and over and over. So that's what we do.
Okay.
And if you decide to pull out that worksheet, we would love to hear from you. If you need some support with it, if you have any questions on the how-to, you can download my book free from the website. There are videos, there are audios, there's all kinds of material. My wife and I, Jeanie, we travel 6 to 10 months of the year, and all of our travel work, but not actually 99.9% of it's done free because we're committed to giving the tools away, whether people have money or not, it's irrelevant. It's just about getting it out there. It's time for us to change the insanity of our culture and wake up as human lives, human beings. That's what our work is about.
Okay. Well, that sounds great. Thank you. That's very informative.
Thanks for your call, Linda.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Bye-bye.
Most welcome. So, Jeanie, do we have any other exciting information happening in the chat room?
Someone wanted to know if you could give an explanation or definition of the associated. I said associated, but it's where you were talking about the dissociated mind.
Dissociated mind, yeah. Sure. Yes, in fact, I think there's some archive shows about that, but that you can go back and listen to. I think there may be 1 or 2 of them where we talk fairly extensively about that. But rather simply, when I say to my mind, I don't want to be responsible for this. Now, of course, you never hear somebody saying, rarely would you hear somebody actually saying, I don't want to be responsible for this. But here's how the denial process works. When I say, you made me, when I say to somebody, you made me sad, you made me angry, you made me afraid, basically what I'm saying to my mind is, mind, you are not allowed to show me that this belongs to me. You are not allowed to show me that this is going to happen to me forever until I forgive it. You are not allowed to show me that I have anything to do with what's happening. You're only allowed to show me evidence that it's all everybody else's fault. So when I do that, what happens is I dissociate from that part of my mind. In the ancient Aramaic, as I said, that was called the heart. That level of mind that is unnatural for a human being was called the heart. And you remember they said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. They knew the laws of living. They knew exactly how it worked. And if there's something I deny and dissociate from, because I'm an energetic being in an energetic world with that denied, dissociated energy, I create results. I resonate and pull things in to happen to me over and over and over again until I'm willing to come back into direct relationship with my own dissociated states. I can't change them. I'm locked in. I'm stuck with that dissociated state. And so the idea of the work is to put an end to the dissociated state, to remove that barrier. In the ancient teachings, it was called the veil of the temple. You might remember they said the veil of the temple must be rent in twain, which of course means torn in two. Were they talking about a purple curtain in a church? No. The veil of the temple is your structure. In the ancient Aramaic, the temple is your body, your structure. The veil is the barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious. And you got to remove it. And when you remove it, what happens is you get to confront what's in that dissociated mind. And guess what you're going to find? You're going to find everything that you have ever denied. You're going to find everything that your mother and your father have ever denied. You're going to find everything that your mother and your father's mothers and fathers, and theirs and theirs and theirs before them. That's what you're going to find in your dissociated mind. You're going to find those patterns. And most people say, forget it. I don't want to go and do that. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to experience that. Well, here's how the game works. If we deny and dissociate, we get to experience in the world what is in our dissociated state. That's why they said take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. So there's no choice about whether you experience it. The only choice is, do you experience it consciously and therefore are empowered to change it, or do you experience it unconsciously as the aches and pains of aging, the traumas of accidents, the horrible people that show up in your life? Because your life is a direct analog energetically from a physics point of view. I'll never forget when I first touched into the Aramaic language, it was very clear to me that this was a physics language. This Aramaic language is not about theology. It's about how the world works. It's about psychology. It's about genetics. When they said the sins of the father will be passed into 3 and 4 generations, that word sin is an archery term. It simply means you missed the bullseye. It's off the mark. When you put an energy in that's off the mark into your structure, guess what? It gets passed on from generation to generation. Got nothing to do with the punishing God. It's got to do with what we hide from ourselves. We hide holographically in every cell of our structure, including the sperm and the egg in our body. And were we to conceive a child, that child would have a structure. Every thought we've ever thought, every feeling we've ever felt, every reality we've ever denied and dissociated from. And so you get to open that once you've got the tools, and you get to start to move through your own dissociated state. All of a sudden, you move into conscious creatorship. Life becomes a whole different game when you do that. And so we're here to empower people to head into a whole different game. Life, conscious creatorship, living as a human being, the absolute active presence of love, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's what we're here to support people in doing. Does that seem to get to the question that was being asked, Jeanie?
Yeah. Michael?
Yes, sir.
In the chat room, somebody's writing, I'm experiencing trauma and pain now, what feels like all the people who are or were close to me. Does that mean I'm denying something or disassociated? I feel like I'm living from my heart and truly forgive others and situations.
Well, that's the first problem, is you're forgiving others. And my offering is you can't forgive anybody else for anything. The act of pardoning them is a nice thing to do, but if you do pardoning work, I let you off the hook without addressing and forgiving what you're pardoning somebody for, then what happens energetically, you just focused into what you're dissociated from and intensified it. So you will tend to experience more and more of it. As opposed to, if it's appropriate, I choose to pardon you for what you've done. And I realize that my rage, my fear, my pain, my grief, my sadness around this is about the content of my physiology. So now, having pardoned you, I'm going to go to work and forgive in me what never belonged. Forgiveness is the delete key. Forgiveness is the removal. The hostility, the fear, the rage, and the pain is the call to 911 saying to your brain, we have a problem down here in the body. There's something here that doesn't belong. There's a sin going on. There's an energy in this tissue that doesn't belong here. It's got nothing to do, that idea of sin has nothing to do with, the idea of you're a worthless sinner and you should just, pretend that you're so low that you're lower than a snake's belly, and then everything will be okay at some time in an afterlife. Because if you look at the man named Yeshua, he said, I come to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. I didn't come to condemn you as a sinner. And, we've all done stuff that's off the mark, and when we face it and start to remove it, not forgive others for the fact that it's there, but start to remove it, then we get to move into true, actual human life. Does that make sense?
Well, it certainly makes sense. I don't have any comment yet from that person.
Okay, cool. Well, do you have any thoughts about that? Or David, are you still there? Jeanie?
I have David's phone, so David's not on.
Okay.
There was another question in the chat room. Have you heard of the Kundalini, and do you use it? That other person just wrote back in response to your answer, no one cares if I forgive the situation or them. I can see why the drama-trauma situation occurs. It does still hurt when others are not kind, especially family.
So my input to you would be it does not hurt. When you say it hurts, you're in denial. If you move into I hurt when people aren't kind, then what you can do is you can directly access your hurt, and as you access your hurt directly, you're empowered to change it. Then you can stand in front of the unkind person and listen to the show from yesterday. That's exactly what that whole show was about, and we went through the forgiveness process. If you stand in front of the most outrageously unkind, abusive person in the world, and you have no unkindness or abuse in you or pain around that, you will stand in your human life as a space of compassion and love, rather than falling into the pattern that they're in. And that's how you become empowered. And yes, it is especially true about our family systems, because our family systems are locked into certain patterns. And being part of that family system, of course, everybody who's got pain about all those nasty people in the family who are unkind play into the game and support it with their rage and their abuse, or they're isolating that person, rather than coming forward as the space of love and holding the space for that person to heal, for that person to deal with whatever is of the painful, traumatic nature in them. Then as we step into that space, everything begins to shift and change and heal. And so that's where we want to head with this process of forgiveness. That's where
we have a caller on.
Oh, cool. Fabulous. Area code is?
I believe it is Nene.
Well, hey there. Oh, my goodness. Have you landed already, Nene?
She just disappeared.
Well, call back.
She had sent me a text and said that they were in Orlando and that all was well earlier.
Oh, good. Good.
She just disappeared, so maybe she'll call back.
Okay, well, Nene is one of our fabulous new teachers who's going to be teaching in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, along with Dayu, who's going to Chicago right now, but going to be working with Nene in Miami, South Florida area. It's between Miami and Fort Lauderdale, so we'll hope that she calls back in. And otherwise, there was a question about Kundalini. There are a lot of beliefs about Kundalini. I think most of them are errant. People think that it's an energy that resides in the base of the spine. It comes up the spine and creates all these effects. When you start looking at this so-called body-mind unit as an energy system, you realize the error of that thought. At least that's where my reality stands, how I see it, that what we call Kundalini, when let's imagine that you have a TV antenna up on the roof, and About 20 years ago, somebody went up on the roof and bent all the arms on the antenna and turned it backward. So for 20 years, you've been watching this thing called television. Your favorite show is on Channel 2 at 7 o'clock at night. And for 20 years, you've been watching this blurry, snowy picture with this sound that kind of cuts in and out. And you go, well, that's just television. That's the way it is. It's always been that way, always going to be that way. And then imagine that somebody went up on the roof, turned the antenna around, straightened all the arms so you had a properly shaped antenna. When you're in an energy world, shape determines frequency received. So imagine that somebody does all that repair, all of a sudden your television is going to have a Kundalini experience. What's going to happen is the signal that, let's say with the backward antenna that had all the arms bent, the signal strength was maybe 30%. And so with 30% signal strength, it was hard to see, hard to hear, but man, that was your favorite show. You've been watching it for years. Now all of a sudden, crystal clear picture, booming through sound, voices loud, clear, and you go, whoa, where did all that energy come from? This is awesome. I never knew television could be like this. Well, if you recognize that there's no such thing as matter, that your so-called body, your energetic system has an antenna, the bony structure of the head, the spine, and the pelvis are the antenna structure of your form. Because we've emotionally traumatized it, it's out of alignment because it's been physically traumatized. You ever watch a parent that every time they turn around, they're whacking their kid in the head? Well, that's the core of the antenna. Those fine bones in the head are designed to continuously move through a proper range of motion that bring through all the frequencies that body, that energetic system, needs to feed every organ. So the person who was repeatedly hit, let's say in the right side just above the ear, if you check them out, what you'll find is instead of a properly moving parietal bone, somebody's bent that arm on the antenna, it's all jammed up, and it doesn't bring in the energies that it needs to bring in. Now, wherever the system's been traumatized is where the energy will tend to show up first. I've seen Kundalini show up in a finger. I've seen it show up in a knee, in the shoulder, in the base of the spine. In the East, it came to be believed that it was an energy resident in the base of the spine because sexuality is a major block for most people. And so the energy shows up where the major blocks are. So it developed into a belief that that's what it was. But actually, energetically, once you bring your system, let's say you got that locked parietal bone from being hit in the side of the head over and over and over again by Dad every time he got peeved at you, and we unlock that parietal bone. One of the things we teach in our energy or our intensive on Why Is This Happening to Me Again is hands-on energy field work. And the hands-on energy field work shows how to realign that antenna. When it comes into alignment, all of a sudden, just like the 30% signal for the television going to 100 when you correct the antenna, all of a sudden you get this blast of energy through. So I've seen people, let's say, for instance, people who as kids were into sports, and seen somebody, I was in college ball, and I injured my knee, and I injured my shoulder, and I had this neck thing. And they're just laying there on the floor breathing and doing energy field work, and all of a sudden, what happens? The energy punches through, and it goes to the knee. And guess what? The knee's restructured and healed. It goes to the shoulder. Energetically, the shoulder's restructured and healed. The neck is. And the young lady that's sitting with me here that just finished teacher training just shared with me or reminded me about the experience that one of the people in the intensive had today. We did our final still point breathing session. And I don't know, do you remember how long ago Marie had that accident? She didn't share it with me. I don't know, but several years ago. Yeah. Several years ago, one of the people that was in the intensive was skiing, and it got later than she realized, and she's going down the professional slope, and she's not a professional skier, but she went the wrong way and ended up about 40 miles an hour slamming into a tree. Was in a coma, totally unconscious, and almost died. So this morning in her breath session, she goes back, and all of a sudden she feels all of the trauma of hitting that tree in the front of her legs and in her shins and in her knees. She was not even aware that when she hit this tree, her skis locked on and damaged both of her ankles. All of a sudden, she had the memory of, oh my God, the skis were still on. That's why my ankles were hurt. And she had this intense, actually from the beginning of the intensive until today, this intense burning in her back that's been going on for a long time. And she went through and realized that from slamming into a tree, she had this crushing sensation that just crushed her chest and her abdomen. And so today, as the energy picked up and moved through, she blew that all out. It's called Kundalini. That's what Kundalini is. So there's my thought on that. Any other questions in the chat room or any other callers on the line?
There's no other callers. The only conversation going on in the chat room is the same person said, I understand the law of attraction. I feel stuck because I think I'm in shock at my family's and people's reaction to unconditional love or forgiveness, heart-centered. And she's at the site, and they're going to do the worksheets. And
cool.
Thinking about everything that's been said.
Go ahead. You were cutting out a little bit, Jeanie.
And they're thinking about what all has been said.
Okay. So an interesting thing to do is go to the Matthew 5 in the New Testament. And again, this isn't religious, just how it works. And read the 8th Beatitude. And we call it the 8th Beatitude crew when somebody comes near the work and says, man, I want to do this. And then their stuff starts to come up. And what happens is, instead of being responsible, they go into resistance and they puke on you. So I understand exactly what you're speaking about. That is the way that the game works. And once you realize that, then you realize that you've probably done the same thing, and your pain around that issue is because you've done that, and it's in your genetics. And as you start to do the forgiveness work, you remove that pain, you remove that trauma, and every time it happens, you simply become a deeper space of love and look at your issues around it. And if you decide, there's a really courageous group of folks who just did teachers training who are going to go out and teach this work, and it takes courage. And having done this for the last 40 years, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to play John the Baptist for people. And, if you go back and you read that story of John the Baptist, it's not a story about, a guy and getting his head cut off. It's a story about exactly what you're speaking of. You remember the king and queen were in denial. They were dissociated from the illegality of the behavior that they were doing. A fellow named John the Baptist brought to them information they didn't want to look at. Well, when one's in denial, one goes into what we call blockage of truth. When you live in blockage of truth and truth shows up, what happens is your stress goes up. Most people have their stress attached to getting rid of the source of the information that they don't want to look at. So John the Baptist gets in the king and queen's face and says, look, you guys, this is not right. You're breaking the energetic law. And so what did the king and queen do? They arranged to have his head taken off. Now, if you're going to play John the Baptist for somebody, there are two very important skills that you need to learn that John hadn't developed, and that is you got to know when to duck and when to hold the mirror up to reflect back to people that what they're dealing with is their own. And there will simply be, as you bring truth to people, a certain amount of attack. But read the 8th Beatitude. Very interesting when you look at it with those brain cells. And as you look at it with those brain cells, you see there's just another principle of physics, another principle about how the game works. And these are the laws by which our lives operate. And as we understand them and harmonize with them, we have absolute liberty within them, and therefore the ability to create the best year yet of our eternal lives. And that's what we hold for you that you will be doing from now on. So we hold you in a blessing. So, Jeanie, I think we're complete with the show. And
thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.